All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of Teen Talk Live. I am your host, Dillard. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm licensed in the states of Georgia and Minnesota, and also temporary license in New Jersey. So I'm able to see clients in those states. But tonight, I am so glad that you are catching this recording because I have a special guest, and we're talking about self-harm and suicide. Not a very popular topic to talk about, but my special guest, Miss Carla Carter, is here to help us unpack that subject. Oh my goodness. Welcome, Carla. Welcome to Teen Talk Live.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Before we jump in, because I'm like ready to go.
I am too. I am
Right?
too.
But before we jump in, I want you to take a moment to introduce yourself to our guests and let them know who you are and how do you serve.
All right, my name is Carla Carter. I'm a licensed associate professional counselor here in the state of Georgia, and I work in the community. And so I am the therapist that works with children and teens in their home and in their schools.
Hey. As a former school-based mental health therapist, I kudos to you because that you are doing very important work. You know, you're going where they live and where they work. And that is
Yes,
so important
ma'am.
to see children and teens in their own element. And I appreciate that
Yes,
about your work.
ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
So let's dive right in, right? Because we're talking about self-harm and suicide. And not a very popular topic because there is a misnomer out there that says if we talk to teens about suicide or if we ask them if they're thinking about it, then we'll plant the idea
Right.
in their
And
minds.
right. And I think that's one of the misconceptions. I'm first talking about self-harm and then suicide because they're two different things, even though that there may be some symptoms and some similarities, they are different. And I hope that this broadcast will, number one, open up a conversation in our community because, as you mentioned, it's not a popular subject. And oftentimes I find adults just shun it away.
Yeah.
And so self-harm refers to a person that injures themselves, whether it's cutting, burning, inflicting foreign objects into their skin. Those are some examples of self-harming. And as you said, a lot of people think self-harm, people that self-harm, teens that self-harm, they're trying to commit suicide, and that's not the case. Now self-harm can lead to suicide, but oftentimes that's not the goal.
That is so true. And it's sometimes let's unpack self-harm a little bit. A lot of times, when patients or parents call me and they talk about their teens inflicting self-harm, they always, in most cases, they'll lead off with they're seeking attention.
Exactly. And I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to save that, but I'm glad you brought it up. I've had parents as friends even that have had children as young as third grade that would
Yes.
say, my child is self-harming, or my child says that they want to kill themselves, but they don't mean that. And a lot of times parents minimize it. And so one of the takeaways, people use the term attention seeking, but a
Mhm.
good friend of mine brought a term that I love to use called connection seeking. And what I
Ah,
often tell those parents, okay, after we go through an assessment, informal assessment, and I get a
right.
little background information, and they say, well, they just want attention. They just, the first thing I say is, even that should pause for our attention. If a child is just saying, I want to kill myself or I want to hurt myself, and parents think that that's for attention, that should bring us pause,
Yeah.
and we should respond to that strong emotion with empathy. And so you are correct, especially those young people that experience self-harm. They do it a lot of times, in my experience, is because a child or a teen have experienced some type of trauma, whether that be physical abuse, sexual abuse, or verbal abuse. There is something that has happened in their lives where the pain is so unbearable,
Yeah.
where there's so emotions that they can't hold it, that the only way that they can find relief is to feel something. We
Yeah.
have to keep in mind, a lot of times when young people experience some type of trauma, some teens, they're numb. They don't
Yeah.
have any feeling. And so self-harm is a response so that I can just feel something. I remember I had one of my clients who was a cutter, and she said, you know what, Miss Carla, I wasn't trying to kill myself. She said, but I was just going through so much. She said, I couldn't feel. She said, my body, she said, if I hit my arm against the wall or against something, I couldn't feel it. She said, but the moment I cut myself, she said, it felt like it was just, if you can imagine, with water, and the dam blocks the water, but as soon as she cut herself, she said it was a relief.
Yeah.
And oftentimes our teens, they want to avoid, if they can feel, they want to avoid that feeling. And so a lot of times, um our teens self-harm, it's not because they necessarily want to kill themselves. That's why it's so important to have the conversation, to connect with
That's
our
right.
teens and our young people to find out what's really going on.
That
And
is so true.
I can keep
I
on
look.
talking, Miss Ann. So jump in.
I know you
Jump
are.
in.
You are right on. You are right on, because it is that cry for connection. And
Yes.
if we can reframe that from saying you're seeking attention to
Right.
you're crying out for connection, I think that
Yeah.
is really, really important. Another thing that you said is to approach this from a place of empathy, because
Yes.
we have to tap into the emotion that's bringing them to doing that. Now, that's not to say that I've always done this right, but I've learned a few things along the way.
Yes, ma'am.
Right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I have learned a few things along the way. And the thing about it is, the emotions are so great that they don't know how to deal with it or how to feel. So it's like
Right.
shoved down till I'm numb, and then I want to feel something. I don't know. I don't know how to deal with it.
Right. Or it's where you have the Coke bottle and you shake it, and as soon as the top is lifted, it just pours out. And
Yes.
so I think we also, what I try to communicate with a lot of my parents is just basic development. You know,
Mhm.
um, the brain is not even developed at 14, 15, 16, 17. And so we as adults, we're expecting them to be able to have logical thinking and all of the things that we have as adults, and they're just not there yet. And so they may not come and tell you, I got this bad grade and I was feeling so bad that it made my body feel heavy. And I
Yeah.
noticed that stomach was, they don't have that language. And so I back to, we have to begin, whether it's self-harm whether it's suicide, we have to begin to make that connect with our children. There's a difference with being in the room with your child and in the room with your child and connecting with
That's right.
them.
That's
It is
right.
a huge difference. And what I tell parents, they say, well, I ask my kids, how you doing? Da 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 da. And I say, well, if your kids are like my kids, when you say, how was your day? It was okay.
Fine.
What happened? Nothing.
Nothing.
I'm fine. I say, but it's those moments when you're connecting with them, when you're watching a movie together, or when you're cooking dinner together, ways to connect. That's when you can begin to, that's why I tell people, you got to learn how to slip it in. Because if you just come and say, hey, you thinking about suicide? You thinking about killing yourself? And notice what I'm saying. I'm not saying change the language, because when it comes to suicide and self-harm, we have to be very direct. But I'm
Very much
talking
so.
about when we present it in
How
a
to
way.
approach. The approach is key.
Exactly. The approach is key. I've had more conversations with my kids, with clients, when we're playing Uno. We know that as therapists, when we're playing games, or when I'm out with my children volunteering at various events, I find out stuff then. But if we just sitting down, I'm like, so, how you feel about this? The information is not always forthcoming.
Because the first thing they're going to say is, that was awkward. And then they're going to say, mom's acting all weird.
Right, right,
Right.
right,
But
right.
if you are already connecting, if it's
Yes,
coloring or doing your hair, or
exactly.
just a light moment, it cannot be in the middle of argument. So what you
Oh, no,
thinking?
no,
You
no,
think about
no.
killing yourself?
Right.
No, it can't be. Or if I'll just kill myself, then no, that's not the time. And sometimes they'll say things like that in the heat of an argument,
Yeah.
and you still need
And
to pay attention.
yeah, and that's why one of the biggest ways to connect is, like I said before, meet those strong emotions with the empathy. A lot of times, as we know, when angry, going through, it's always something deeper going on. And the one thing that I encourage parents, when you have a child that has built up courage, or that has chosen this moment to confide in you and say, well, maybe I just killed myself.
Mm-hmm.
And the number one thing that parents say that's wrong is, well, just go ahead. I cannot tell
Yes.
you how many
Yes.
times I have had parents and have had to re-educate and say, even if that's what you're thinking, you don't want to say it, because all of us, no matter how small or how old we are, we want to be heard.
That's right. That's right. You're,
And
I mean, you're really saying something there. We want to, and we want to feel like we belong.
yes, yes. And so, um, one of the ways when parents say, well, how do I connect, or what do I do? Get curious about their world. Pay attention to the little things. And for those of us in this field, the warning signs are obvious. If you have a child, whether it's self-harm or suicide, if you have a child that's no longer interested in activities they used to be interested in, if they're withdrawing, if they're sleeping too much, or they're not sleeping at all, all of these are what I call the red flags. And
Yes.
so that's the time to have a strong conversation. You don't beat around the bush. One of the things, especially if I have a client that has a history of
Yes.
suicide attempts or suicide ideation, the first thing I do, I tell them, I take that seriously.
That's right.
So if I get a call, or if you tell me you feel like you feel like you want to kill yourself, Miss Carla is boom, boom. I'm asking about a plan. I'm asking about all of those things.
Yeah.
And so I encourage parents, start connecting, get curious about their world. You will be surprised about how many parents don't really know what their children are doing. Oh, my child, they're into this Minecraft stuff, but I don't know anything about it. Or my child likes anime. I don't know what that is. I just know they be in a room all the time.
Right.
So get curious about their world.
That's
You
right.
know, I have a son, he's into anime, and he used to ask me, Mom, come watch anime with me. First of all, it's a cartoon, it's in Japanese. No, but then I had to pause and say he has an unmet need. This is a perfect opportunity to get connected, because whether we realize it or not, we all have unmet needs.
That's
And
right.
so that, get curious about their world, parents. Number two, I've already said it. When your teens present you with strong emotions, when they're upset, when they're coming to you, when they're saying, when you discover cuts on the arm,
Or on the thighs.
or on the thighs, or on the stomach,
Or
when
on the
you see
stomach.
burn marks on the stomach, yes ma'am, when we can cover it up, because arms, they got sophisticated now, because now
That's right.
it's hot, you
That's
can,
right.
and that's another sign, parents, if they're wearing long sleeves, and you got to kind of gauge it, because the trend that I see a lot, teens wear hoodies year round. So you got to dig deeper. You got to
Yes.
dig deeper.
Yes.
But yes, they are
Yes.
cutting, they are burning stomachs, because now they're wearing short sleeves. Now they're wearing shorts, so they're becoming sophisticated. So again, we have to be in tune. And I'm gonna just say this, as a parent that have experienced both a child self-harm and a child that experienced suicidal thoughts, we have to be intentional and do everything we can.
That's so true.
If they brush you off, keep asking.
That's so true.
Hug them. It's so they're gonna be like, oh, stop hugging me. Well, if they like my kids, they love hugs. But hold that hand, rub that hand. Take out time to connect. When our babies come to us, we got to put down the cell phone
That's so
to
true.
get off the computer. Now, all of us are busy. And if you are, one of the things I tell my child when they want to talk and I'm in the middle of documentation or completing a video, I say, give me 5 minutes. Let me finish this. Because if you tell me now, I'm not going to be able to give you my full attention. And I want to be able to give you my full attention, because what you have to say, I know is important. So can you give me 2 minutes? Can you give me 5 minutes? A lot of times, 9 times out of 10, they say, yeah, Mom, okay. And I'm intentional to stop what I'm doing or
Yeah.
complete it and immediately go and be present. Be there, turn the TV off, put the phone down, and listen with your heart.
Yes. I think that's so important. A couple things that I did want to say is, when teens are participating in self-harm, a lot of times, how we say parents say they're seeking attention. If they were seeking attention, they wouldn't try to hide it on their body, right?
Good. That's a
So
good, that's a good
so
point.
so cancel out that thought. They're hiding it. They're doing it on their thighs, they're
Yeah.
doing it on their stomach, they're covering it up. So let's dispel that myth that they're seeking attention and go a little step further. And I love the idea of validating them and giving them a space to say, give me
Yes.
5 minutes, I'll come back. I'll come back to you, and keep your word about it. That is so, so important. Those are skills that I wish I knew when my kids were growing up. to do. But a lot of times I didn't have those skills. I didn't know how to navigate that. And that's why it's so important for me now to teach parents or youth workers to realize these signs and to get these skills so that they can make such a big difference. It makes a huge difference.
And you're right. And Miss Ann, as passionate about suicide and self-harm as I am, I didn't have the tools either. Even working with this community,
Yeah.
my own children, family members were experiencing these things. And
Yeah.
so you hit on something. We just have to be intentional. And for me, it's about continuing the conversation, bringing that education, which is what you're doing with your platform, to our communities. Because even in 2020, our community is still saying it ain't no big deal. It's not a big deal.
But it
That
is.
they not going through nothing. They
Yeah.
just, it's just a girlfriend. It's
Yeah.
just they didn't get into the right school. It's just their
Mm-mm.
grades. It ain't that big. This coronavirus, they miss their friends. They can talk to them on the phone. It's no big deal.
It is a big
But
deal.
again, but
It
again,
is.
showing up and
Yes.
meeting them with that empathy.
Exactly. And in Georgia, the statistic shows that the youngest person who's died by suicide, she was 6 years old. 6 years
Yeah,
old. And, in our mind, we might be saying, what does a 6 year old have to, want to kill themselves for? And the thing about it is when teens and children, when they attempt suicide, because their brains aren't fully developed, they're
right,
not necessarily thinking that this act is final.
right, right,
That part of the brain has not been developed yet. They just
right.
know that they want relief from whatever pain they're enduring.
And I think in addition to that, I read statistics where children as young as 4, which I
Mm,
was amazed, as young as 4 participate in self-harm. As you said, a 6-year-old in Georgia, we know as it relates to suicide, there is no single cause to
that's right.
suicide. We know that a lot of times it occurs because of life stresses. Um,
Hmm.
I remember my first experience, um, informal experience with suicide was maybe 18 years ago. And I was working in an after school program, and a 12-year-old, first time I ever heard of a Black person, a Black child, let me say that I knew died of suicide. He hung himself. He was 12 years old
Oh
and he
my,
was gay. He was
my.
gay. He was
Mm,
being teased. He was being bullied. And he was a little unsure. So, parents, again, when we say this is real, it's happening, suicide, self harm knows no boundaries,
yeah.
whether it's social economic status, it doesn't matter.
It does not
From
discriminate.
it does not discriminate. So some people have and have nots. It doesn't matter. It really is about the experiences.
That's right.
What life stresses are our babies facing in 2020, and I can tell you there are many.
That's so true. And it might not seem, the stresses that they're facing might not seem a lot to us as adults, because we've been through some things. We've learned some coping skills,
Right,
for the most part.
right.
We've it seems in a lot of cases that that's minuscule. One of the things that we do as adults, which we have to find a better way, When kids tell us that they're being picked on, a lot of times we'll do that old, remember that old adage, sticks and stones will break my bones, but words, they never hurt me. That's one of the biggest lies we've ever been told, or
Yes,
we've told
ma'am.
our children. But those
Yes, ma'am.
words hurt, and we keep telling the kids, ignore them, ignore them, ignore them. I think we got to do better by helping them to come to some resolutions and helping them to navigate that space, because this is something that has a lasting impact on our children, on their brains, on their brain development, and it can literally alter their personality.
Yes, ma'am. And you hit the nail on the head. The things that we do now, and the research is coming out more and more. The trauma that I mentioned earlier, whether it's verbal, and we take that lightly. Oh, which goes with what you said. Oh, they just ignore it. They just talking about you. I think as parents, we have to begin to be a little bit open-minded and realize that these are different times that we're living in. It's not like what it was when we were growing up. And I think that's the first thing, because a lot of times when I encounter clients that have been bullied, the first thing the parent says is what you said. Well, when I was growing up,
Yeah,
da da
yeah,
da 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 da.
yeah,
Well, when I was growing up, it's just
yeah.
a little picky. But it's so much more than that in today's times.
It really is, because you know what? When we were growing up, we didn't have social media that haunts us in our bedrooms
Not at
and
all.
in our private spaces. So, when we're thinking about children who are being bullied, it doesn't just stop at school. It goes on the bus, it goes on the playground, it goes in the neighborhood, and it goes in your bedroom. It's brought in,
Yes.
through the cyberbullying and things like that. And it's something that is relentless in a lot of cases. And so, parents, we just have to pay attention. We have to pay attention. We have to be mindful about what's going on with our teens.
And Miss Ann, it's hard.
Yeah.
I don't tell any parent it's easy, because we're parents. I tell my parents, I'm your therapist or whatever. I say, but I stand with you as a parent.
Yeah.
Like we're all going, it's not easy.
No,
Even whether you come from a single household or whether you come from a two-parent household, it is not easy.
not at all.
But we have to be intentional, and we have to seek help.
That's
That's
right.
another thing that our community, we're beginning to see it more,
More.
but we have to be able to reach out for help, for
Yes.
safe people, but to reach out for help. We can't do it on our own.
No.
And I think a lot of us, um, we think, well, this is my child, this, that, and other, and I have to do this on my own. If I'm a single parent, I have to. No, whether you're a two-parent household,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
have to get in to where when we see our child struggling, or we see a child struggling, that we are able to recognize first, I can't do this by myself. I
Exactly.
need I need a Miss Ann. I need a teen talk. I need support groups and all the other resources that are out there to help the baby.
And the next thought to follow that is, this is not a reflection of my parenting.
Miss
Because
Ann,
because
yes.
you are not a bad parent because your child has suicide ideations, or because your child is involved in self-harm. That's not a reflection of your parenting.
And I think that's one of the hardest things, even for me. I went through that cycle. That's why it's so important as therapists and counselors, we do our own work.
Own
Shout
work.
out to my counselor.
Own
We
work.
do our own work, because that you would get stuck in that place. You
Yes,
would get stuck in that. I am just so grateful that I had the resilience after I went through that, because I went through that cycle. I ain't gonna tell you I didn't. I said, well, Lord, how can I help these kids out here and my own kid? Oh, I want that. And as I say on my videos, as I'm talking to you, I'm preaching to myself. But that is so key. A lot of us don't reach out because of that,
that is
because
so
we
true.
think it's going to be a reflection on us. But if for all of those that are listening, it is not. It does not make you any less than the parent that you are.
That is so, so true. And, I'm just so happy, Miss Carla, that you were able to join us on Teen Talk Live. As we come to the end of tonight's show, what are a couple of things that you've said a whole lot. What are a
I
couple of
know.
things that you would love to make sure that parents get? If you don't get anything else, get this.
Okay. Again, thank you for the opportunity. The very
Absolutely.
first thing is that I would encourage all of my parents is to begin to change their language.
Mm,
When a child, when you discover
yes.
when you discover that your son, your nephew, your niece, maybe they have cut marks on their thighs or on their arms. And that's not the only type of self-harming. If you have a teen that's drinking a lot of alcohol, that's another type of self-harm. But if you find that, or you have a teen or a child that blurts out and says, well, maybe I should just kill myself, I encourage you to change your language, to pause,
Mm-hmm.
to hear their heart, and to respond, because there's a difference between reacting and responding. But respond with empathy. Respond in a matter that you, even if they haven't shared what's going on with you, respond with, whatever you're going through must be really, really hard for you right now. And I'm here. That's all you really can say.
That's right.
You
That's
know,
right.
that's a beginning.
That's right.
That's a beginning to let them know that you heard them. That would
Yes.
be the first thing. The second thing, we talked about the warning signs. You know, if they are self-harming, the warning signs, if you see the marks, if you notice risky behavior, the drinking, the drugging for teens,
Yes.
if they're driving a car and they're doing fast driving, again, all of these things we have to be intentional about.
Or Miss
Those are red
Carla, another piece, not to cut you off, but if they
no.
have somebody in their community that has died by suicide, that's
Yes,
a big warning sign.
yes. That's a one, and they just want to be, they just want to be with them. And again, we have to get curious about, this goes into what my next point. Get curious about their world. If they have friends, like you said, somebody that's died, we've heard of suicide pacts. You got to get curious. I call it getting nosy. Get nosy, because they trying to hide it. Get curious about their world.
All
Find
in the
out.
business.
Yes. Find out as much as you can, and in all, connect. Just take time to connect,
Yes.
spend one-on-one time. You know, I'm a mother of 4, and
Yes.
it's hard. You got to juggle, but spend that one-on-one time. And it's not always the quantity of time. Is, as I share with my parents, especially when we go into unmet needs, it's not always I got to spend a whole day with you. If
No,
you can, great, kudos to you. But it's those small moments where you're making them memorable, where you're connecting,
that's right.
where you are in tune with them.
That's right. And I would add to that, don't think that my child is too young. You
Yes.
start building the foundation, you start building the platform right
Yes,
now,
ma'am.
no
Yes,
matter
ma'am.
how, and don't think that they're too old.
I was just getting ready to say that.
You
Yes,
know, don't
ma'am.
think that they're too old, because nothing, I think one of the biggest needs that any human being has is the need for connection with their parents.
Yes.
And so don't think they're too old.
And
Wow.
listen, because a lot of times our kids kind of tell us stuff. It may be in a joking way, but
Mhm.
listen to our kids. I have a short example. My kids came to me. They were young, Miss Ann. They came to me. I guess they were like 7, 8, and 9. They was, or maybe a little older. They was like, "Mama, you're not a hugger." I had my kids
Mhm.
coming up to me telling me I'm not a hugger. I'm like, I'm a hugger. I don't know what y'all talking about. I hug y'all all the time. They looking at me like, no, you don't. So what did I do? I went on Facebook, Miss Ann, and I said, my kids said I'm not a hugger. I'm a hugger. Ain't not a hugger. My whole thread say, no, you're not. You don't hug people. And so I had to like pause, and I had to have a conversation with them. And they told me, they was like, Mama, you only hug us if we hug you. See, I could be transparent. And like I said, as I'm talking to you, I'm
Yeah.
talking to myself.
Uh,
But I listened to them. And
yes.
so what I started doing, I started hugging. When my kids told me that, I started hugging them. So then guess what they said, Miss Ann? Well, now the only reason you hugging us because we told you that you're not a hugger. So me and myself, I said, well, let's look at that. I said, you told me that you needed something.
Yes.
What if I kept on not hugging? How would that have made you feel? Or what if this perspective, I heard what you said and I changed to give you what you need?
That's good.
And the hugs,
That's good.
they weren't fake hugs or anything like that, but I was mindful. Once we had that conversation, they didn't say anything about it. And so the last thing in closing, parents, and Miss Ann, as you can see, I can talk about these two subjects all day long. We have to listen to our babies, and we have to be intentional. We have to look for stuff, because our babies give us hints. They tell us in not so many words.
Yes.
If we just take a moment to pause and listen with our hearts.
That is so key. I always say, look, listen to what they're not saying, because that is so critical,
Right.
so critical. Well, Miss Carla, it has been such a pleasure, and I know we could go on and on and on, because there's so much to talk about this topic. But I want our parents to think about this, even in this time that people are sheltering in place during this
Yes.
coronavirus. Just take this opportunity to form those connections
Yes,
and
ma'am.
listen to what's not being said, right? And
Yes, ma'am.
pay attention. Well, thank you so much for being on Teen Talk Live.
Thank
Please
you.
tell our audience what's coming up for you next and where they can find you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity again. I am so glad and honored that I was a part of this. What's coming up for me? Well, I am going to have a video out by the end of the year for our youngsters.
Yay.
And it's a video about suicide. It's going to come with a workbook. I am very heavily in play therapy. And so look for that. As we both just talked about, kids don't know how to deal with it, or even deal with a friend or a family member that's committed suicide. So stay tuned for that. It should be out by the end of the year. You can reach me at, I'm on Facebook. I'm on Mindful Moments, where I give small tips on how to deal with things that we deal with from a clinician's perspective, and then just ways to improve our overall well being.
That is so awesome. That is so awesome. And let me say this in closing: if somebody discloses to you that they are contemplating suicide, get in touch with the suicide hotline, which is
Yes,
one eight
please.
hundred 273 8255. I think there's an easier one too. I don't know it
There
offhand.
is
You
there
know
is
the easier one?
there is a text
Take
741-741 if you're in crisis, whether it's suicide or self-harm. That is
Yes.
another resource that is there for you. There is help.
There
There
is
is help
help.
out there.
And don't try to handle it on your own. Get a professional involved. Please
Yes,
get a
yes,
professional
please.
involved so that we can take the proper precautions and help give hope. So,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you again for joining us. This has
Thank
been
you.
another great episode of Teen Talk Live, and I can't wait to catch you next time.
Bye bye.